Our water. Damn it. I was almost ready.
Oh, welcome to episode number 21 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast, recorded April 25th, 2019. My name's Eric. I'm the host of the show. I'm based in Southern Ontario. I'm a hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, VE3 EPN, and computer geek. I got into preparedness when I was working frontline emergency services and witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events such as ice storms, power outages, etc. I started a small preparedness company to help get people prepared and to be able to look after themselves for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
Greetings from the West Coast. My name is Ian, and I live on a small hobby farm. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, sport shooter, reloader, and my farm is designated handyman. Let the shit talking begin.
I'm Alan. My friends and family call me a safety nerd. My background as a first responder has developed a strong mind for safety. I teach aid, coach my family and friends to be better prepared. I'm a locksmith by trade. I've worked in the physical security industry for more than 20 years now.
All right.
Every time I say that, I feel old.
Oh, we won't make any old jokes. So we've got some really dirty content for you in this episode. See, we're still going with the jokes here. We're going to start off with some news articles related to preparedness in the outdoors. Next, we're going to be letting you know how we've improved our preparedness since our last episode. Then we're going to get into the main topic of the episode, hygiene during an emergency. Moving to some news articles.
Continuing to follow this, the cyclone that hit Mozambique and that general area. Related to the show, there's now been a bit of a cholera outbreak, which is directly related to a lack of hygienic conditions within the community. So that's not a good thing.
And how long would that cyclone roll through?
Oh, I want to say 6 weeks.
Wow, that's gonna be a long recovery.
Yeah, Anyways, we'll talk about that more later. Yes.
All right. So for myself, I just thought I'd throw in a news article that Emergency Preparedness Week is coming up on May 5th, May 5th to 11th. I threw in a link to a government website, and it's got actually a bunch of pretty decent resource material. So it's maybe worth a look on there. And if you're looking for some basic guidance, it's actually not bad. I just thought I'd throw that link in there.
Yeah, it'll be useful. I've got a link in here from City News. I'm sure everybody, at least in Southern Ontario, who's been watching the news the last little bit has seen the flooding happening in and around the area of Bracebridge. They're currently in a state of emergency. Continuing water levels are rising. There's in the article, there's a bunch of videos they're worth checking out just to see the actual amount of water that's flowing through there. It's a considerable amount. Obviously, they've called a state of emergency. So there's been a number of roads washed out in the area. So it's just something to have a look at and see if you can pull it into your plans.
Flooding is also carried on through Quebec and most of New Brunswick as well. It's a pretty nasty thing happening right now.
It's the Magnetawan River, or is it part of the lake as well?
Let's look in here, like the river for the most part in the article.
Yeah, I know one of our messaging group people there also lives nearby, and she was saying it's kind of interesting because there's some side roads that are passable, but for the most part there's up to 2 or 3 feet of water on the roads, right?
It's not good.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll move in what we've done lately for our preps. So for myself, I get caught up on the show notes here. We've got a blank page. I can assure we haven't done nothing. So for myself, I got the truck serviced. I had a check engine light on, so it was time to get that in and have it looked at. I pulled the codes and figured out what the problem was. Ended up thinking I was going to fix it myself, but it was a part that was crammed way into a small little spot up against the firewall. So I opted, after some discussions with my wife about purchasing some new tools, she won. They went to the shop. So it's back in good working order now. The oil pressure sensor, there's a little filter underneath it that got all clogged up, so it had to get pulled out, and the oil pressure sensor had to be swapped out. But if there was ever a time where we had to leave the house for an emergency purpose, that's going to be our main vehicle for getting out of here. So I make it a point to make sure that it's in good order and is running correctly, and I just can't have a check engine light and no oil running to where it needs to go, because at that point the truck doesn't work. So it's back in good order now. I also dipped into a little bit of cryptocurrency investing, and I know you people who were listening to the financial episode, we said stay away from that, and our expert Taha there said, steer clear. But the geek in me wanted to play around with it a little bit. and I've made a whopping 3 cents.
Hey, that's
better than losing 3 cents.
You cash that out. That's a whole nickel. That's spending money.
And,
exactly.
And as a matter of fact, that's probably more than you'd make in interest in a savings account every month. So
this is true, but probably in the next hour or so, I will have lost $4. But it's very volatile and it jumps all over the place. But I wanted to just kind of goof around with it a bit, and so I did. And also, I finally, after quite a while of not making it out to the range, I was able to get out with a couple of buddies the other night, and we put about 300 rounds each down range. It was a good evening. A couple of buddies and a bunch of rounds down range. You can never go wrong. So. That's my list.
Actually, it's kind of funny. Do you remember back in the good old days when you could actually look under the hood of a car and you had space to work around the engine and you could actually pick out what each individual part was?
Yeah, my truck's not too bad for that. It's a Silverado, so there's a fair amount of room, except that one spot, of course.
Yeah, it's interesting because actually, I had my head underneath the hood of a '74 Volvo today, and just by weird coincidence, and I'm mechanically disinclined. Is that a word? I don't know how to describe it, but I'm just not.
It is now.
Yeah, it is now. Officially. And it's funny because even I could pick out all the parts, and I was like, okay, I understand what he's doing there. And it was very interesting. Just the change between now. It's like every single square inch is crammed full of stuff in under the hood. And back in the good old days, you could see why people were shade tree mechanics, right?
Yeah. And if it's not crammed in a corner, it's got a bunch of wires running to it, and it's run by the computer. Yeah,
and it's interesting because I don't think anything he was saying, nothing was electronic. It was all either hydraulic or manual.
Well, that's good for when those EMPs strike.
That's right.
Yeah.
First thing that went through my head today. So, as for myself, I had actually the parents over for a good chunk of last week, so that kind of reduced the spare time I had available because we had some visiting to do. Also had some health issues myself over the last week, so that kind of put me down for the count. But in the couple days I actually was up and around, did a bunch of reloading. So I actually had the brass prep done over the winter, and then so I made some ammunition for the summer shooting season. Managed to collect together some 308, like just regular plinking rounds for 50 cents a round, which is about half the regular cost what you pay in a store.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I had to wait for some sales to happen before I got it for that low, but it happens. And when the sales come on, just stack it deep, right? And then I visited my self-reliance mentor today, so I had my very first welding lesson. So when my parents came to visit, they actually dropped off a free, free from my parents, MIG welder. Very basic setup, but I wanted to see if it could make it happen. And I brought it over to the old self-reliance mentor there, and he kind of took a look at it, and he kind of fiddled it away, and I watched it in awe for about 20 minutes while he made it serviceable because it wasn't working when I got it. And then we started on the absolute basics of welding. So as you can see by this really nasty looking back end of this thing, I started, doing some lines of welding and everything else. And before you know it, within a couple hours, we had clapped together my very first shooting target, which is good.
Nice.
And you pay about $50 for that in Cabela's. And then I went whole hog and we did this, which is awesome and half-inch thick, so it's pretty much good to shoot anything with. Nice. So when the time comes, that's a nice resounding steel gong. You get a nice clang when you hit the target, and it's good feedback.
Nothing better than hearing that clang after you pop a round off.
Well, it's actually, even for new shooters, it's actually kind of like a feedback that they really, really dig. And like whether it be popping balloons, breaking clay targets, or getting the steel gong, if you're bringing somebody to the range for the first time, you can't ask for better, positive feedback than that.
Oh, no, yeah, it builds confidence very quickly.
Yeah. Targets are fantastic.
Yeah, and so then we carried on while I was over there at the mentor's place. He brought me to the back 40 there, and he actually has a working wood mill. Like he's got like a giant bandsaw set up, and so he gave me some basic instruction on that thing. So I ended up slicing my very first, I think they're 1x6s, 1x5s today, and that was
cool.
Kind of neat. Yeah, so I'd never done that before. So 2 new things today, and then. I guess as far as maintaining the body and mind thing, I had to go and get my first set of prescription glasses a couple days ago. So that means sure sign of getting old, but it's when the zombies do come, you want to be able to see them so you can at least hit them. So
you want to be able to read the show notes too.
Yeah, you want to be able to read the show notes, and you don't want to be blind during the zombie apocalypse. So
just make sure that you protect your eyes when you're welding. There's nothing worse than welder flash.
Yeah, actually, interesting. I had one of those auto darkening helmets that my dad dropped off as well. It was new in the box. It was fantastic. So nice. I was able to test that out. It worked great. So under the testing the gear banner, that was a positive test. And then, like I said, by this time next week, I should probably be looking like this, and it'll be
nerd
better than my dollar store cheaters, hopefully. So
nice.
I'll have to update the show notes as I go along. It's been a busy week for training, but got my SCBA time down under a minute, which is an accomplishment for somebody so new as me. Get to play with some gear this weekend, which is going to be cool, and then we're booking another camping trip probably next month to actually go out and spend some time under the stars in the early part of the season before it gets too hot. So that's my big news for the week. It's been a week of testing and training. So.
What you said, SDCA time?
SCBA, my self-contained apparatus.
Oh, okay, got it.
Big air tank on the back and the Darth Vader mask, and not breathing in the black stuff while you're putting the wet stuff on the hot stuff.
Excellent.
Yep. So that's it's also the only way to not die when there's no oxygen around. So.
And generally, that's the goal, right?
That is the goal. That is the number one goal. Yep. So I can get that that whole apparatus on in under a minute and have be breathing on air, which is it was
impressive.
Significant improvement from the first time I tried it. 7 or 8 minutes the first time. So there we go. That's my improvement this week.
It's all about muscle memory, right?
Exactly. It's all about getting the reps in.
You got it. Well, maybe we'll move into the main topic of the show.
All right, so I guess why are we talking about hygiene in general? Historically, I guess, many, if not the vast majority of deaths, other than, invasions or whatever have you, would be caused by bad hygiene or primitive sanitation. So, I mean, it was really until about 250 years ago that people really got on the sanitation train. You talk about the Civil War surgical suites or people dying from what they thought was bad air, but in case it was just cholera or whatever have you, they didn't know exactly what the cause was. But once they got on the sanitation train, people really started to live longer. So under the preparedness banner, just a pretty easy point to think about. Your normal potty may not be working in an emergency.
You're gonna have to do something with it. You've got 6 months worth of food. You have the ability to deal with 6 months worth of waste.
Yeah, so you still have to poop no matter what. So I thought we'd just talk about that tonight for sure.
Yep. Hey, it's something you gotta think about, right?
So actually,
well, you gotta.
Oh, go ahead.
There was even as recently as happening right now in Mozambique. There was they've got they're having that cholera problem I referenced in the news section. But I remember reading about Hurricane Katrina when the hospitals were still occupied, but everything from the 5th floor down, once the levees gave way, all the sewage started backing up. You gotta have some place to go.
Yep, and especially if you're in a case place, like Bracebridge right now, like if they're dealing with flooding. I mean, clearly their sewer's not working.
Yep.
Or septic fields. I mean, septic fields get flooded. It's the same thing. It still won't work.
Absolutely.
So
we're on a tank here, and when it's been raining heavily, you can tell it takes longer for the sinks to drain.
Oh yeah, absolutely it would. Luckily we're super duper downhill where we are, so we don't really have that problem. But of course, it's just basically the septic tank or septic field will just overflow and go right into the field below that, and you can see where if it wasn't for that, we'd have a problem with drainage for sure. Yep. So I guess we should talk about the diseases caused by hygiene, or lack of hygiene, should I say. Cholera, dysentery, and tuberculosis. So we actually have, I put a couple of links to some articles in there, but also just a quick mention that we still have, rampant cases of tuberculosis up north with hygiene issues and poor sanitation issues. Back when I used to live up north, actually, just a quick story, we used to have to use the honey buckets. And if you weren't ultra careful with that, you could have some problems. So you have to really worry about that for sure. Yep. And cholera and dysentery. I don't think we have too much in the way of cholera here, do we?
It's not a hugely rampant thing. It's also something that's fairly easy to control, and I mean we have overall a fairly clean drinking water system, which helps prevent that for the most part. But that's as long as you're drinking out of a municipal water system or your well water gets tested on any kind of regular basis.
Yeah, and of course we go back to the water episode, but I mean, if you don't have a UV filter or a Berkey or something that's going to take any sort of pathogens out, that could be a problem too, right?
Yeah,
certainly could be.
Yeah, so I mean, I encourage the listeners to research cholera, dysentery, tuberculosis. Signs, causes, not so much cures per se, but at least how to prevent it. But number one, wash your hands.
Yeah, you just cannot wash your hands enough. no matter what you're doing, every time you change tasks, I go through this every time I teach a first aid class. Every time you change tasks, before and after you handle food, before and after you handle food preparation surfaces, wash your hands, take off your rings, take off your watches, scrub under your nails, get it all clean. Interestingly enough, when we did the Stop the Bleed class a couple of weeks back, the trauma nurse that was leading the class mentioned that you don't get any fancier than soap and water. That's what they use in an OR to prep a wound for surgery. So it's probably good enough for your hands as long as you do a thorough job of it.
And that's the key too, is a thorough job.
Something I was always taught, and it's something I still pass on, especially to my kids, is saying happy birthday twice while you're washing your hands. 2 happy birthdays.
What happens if you forget the words? Okay, fair enough.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star also works.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. All right, so we should actually backtrack for a second. So a bit of a subject matter expert. This is one of my little favorite things to talk about, because back in college, when I was trying to pay for college itself, I had to do one of my many jobs was working on the back of a septic truck and a toilet truck. So yeah, I guess we could insert the poop jokes here. I'm waiting.
It's a pretty job, but somebody's got to do it.
We took shit from anybody. One man's shit was another man's gold. Yeah. Anyway, so and of course, it was my father's septic company and a portable toilet company, and so of course we used to make jokes that he was the king of shit, and therefore I was the prince. But anyway, so backing up to the original thing we were talking about here with hygiene, during the when times are tough, shit hit the fan type of things scenario. One of the things you want to have around is preferably a septic system versus a city sewer system, if you can at all help it, because let's face it, city sewer systems don't work nearly as well. If you have a gravity-fed septic field, meaning like it goes downhill from your house to the septic field, basically it's kind of pulse-proof, power outage-proof, everything else, because even septic fields require a pump to pump it from your house to the field.
Just it's not an indefinite length of time, because they do need to be pumped clean every once in a while. But that's as long as you don't wait until the last minute to do it, it should give you a good year of service.
No, for sure it will. And actually, as long as you don't flush anything you're not supposed to down there, you can go up to 3 years easily without being pumped. And even nowadays, like the difference is when I used to have to pump them out, or I'd watch my brother do it, and I'd work the back of the truck or whatever. You don't actually have to pump it clean anymore. They actually leave some stuff on the sides now to keep the bacterial kind of like starter going. And basically the way septic fields work is bacteria break things down for you, and you don't have to worry about anything as long as the bacteria keep feeding on what you're feeding the septic field. So like I said, septic systems from a preparedness perspective are a wonderful thing to have, but not everybody has that option, right?
So what shouldn't you put down the drain to keep the septic system healthy?
Double ply toilet paper, like that's been bleached from Costco. Like the Costco packs are no good. So you want single ply toilet paper. No condoms; they don't break down. No feminine napkins. No bleach. Preferably nothing chemically like paint or anything else. But basically nothing that's going to kill a bug. So that kind of gives you some guidance. I mean, just like you would want to put raw alcohol down there or anything else. Just as long as the bacteria can break it down, you're good to go. So you can even throw meat down there, if like meat bits, like if you have little ground beef bits or whatever, it's not going to kill it or anything else. So you'll just break it down as well. But there's usually 2 tank systems that take care of it. There's like a kind of a chunky style tank, and then there's just like a brown water tank, and then it works out to the field after that to make sure it doesn't clog your field.
Anybody else hungry? I'm hungry all of a sudden.
Oh yeah. Try opening up one of those tanks, and then you'll never be hungry again. So
there's a guy down the road, and he drives the stool bus, which is painted like school bus yellow, and that's I'm more than happy to not DIY that one.
Yeah, if I was going to claim a case of PTSD, is be whenever one of those vacuum trucks powers up, and then starts exhausting what air is in the top of the tank. Ooh.
Yep. Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. So anyways, long story short, where I was going with this is one of the funny stories I had from my experience with that was during there's a group of music festivals back in 1991 called Music 91. And they had a bunch of random concerts going on in BC here. So this is during my high school year. And one of the concerts was an MC Hammer concert. Ooh, dating myself. And it was down in Penticton. And so what they ended up doing is they had a big riot that night in Penticton. And of course, we're having to service the toilets and deal with them on a with a concert kind of level stadium audience, and all of a sudden one guy decides, "Hey, let's tip the toilets." Of course, everybody's like, "Yes, let's do it." And of course, I was the only one going, "No, please don't. I have to clean it up." But they did, and so we kind of cleared out of there and just waited till the riot subsided. Next day, we show up there, and all the toilets have been tipped over, of course. So we're tipping them up right, and of course I'm breaking out my yellow duck suit and the pressure washer to get going. And sure enough, we tipped one up right. There was a guy in there. He had passed out from booze or whatever have you. And when they tipped over the toilet, he didn't wake up. And so he walked out.
That's a lot of booze.
Oh yeah.
I wish I could be that sound asleeper.
Oh yeah. So anyway, we tipped him up right, and he's like, "Wait a minute, I'm still in here, and I'm still doing my business." Yeah. So he walked out of there, and I couldn't stop laughing. But then my brother, who was much wiser than I was at the time, says, "Listen, dude, like he's got a serious disease issue going on there. Like, who knows what he's been exposed to overnight."
Oh, I think we know exactly what overnight.
Yeah. And so, of course, that was like, we actually had to convince the guy to actually walk himself over to the clinic, because that could literally lead to some serious health issues down the road. So
that's how you get pink eye.
It can lead to some serious shit.
Yes, it could lead to some serious, and not pink eye would be the happiest thing that could happen at that point. I mean, even the blue chemical we used in that stuff, I wouldn't want to be bathed in either. So I don't know.
Poseidon's kiss is what we used to call that in the construction industry.
That's right. So, have you guys ever just experienced Montezuma's revenge down in Mexico?
Never been to Mexico, so no, I haven't.
All right. So I guess another thing we can talk about is Montezuma's revenge and Delhi Belly, which is kind of the same thing, caused by E. coli, which is another hygiene issue.
Sure.
So it's also known as traveler's diarrhea. So it doesn't really matter where you are. They've all got different names for it, no matter which country you go to. So caused by poor hygiene, usually by you or somebody handling something you ingest by not washing their hands post-bathroom. So they go to the bathroom, they don't wash their hands, they handle your food, you eat it, and you get diarrhea.
Awesome.
It's a great weight loss program, if anybody's interested. I remember 1 month I got Delhi Belly, and I lost about 30 pounds in a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Because you can't eat, but anyway, you drink lots of water to try and stay hydrated, but you can actually hear it gurgling down and carrying on. Ooh. So it's not good. But one thing, just as a note, there's something called an oral rehydration solution that you can actually buy in a drugstore, if you ever get that. But it feels
like Pedialyte, but more expensive. Yep.
Yeah, kind of like Pedialyte, but for grown-ups, I guess. But a fuel expedient solution for that is a can of Coke and a quarter teaspoon of salt. It's not really what you want, but it's got sugar, it's got salt, it's got water, and it's going to hopefully beat down whatever is like bugging your intestines. Another thing you can do, though, is what we did down in Mexico was lime juice, salt, sugar, water, and even some baking soda if you throw that in as an alkali thing.
Well, it's all about replacing the electrolytes for the most part, right? Which is magnesium, potassium, sodium, and then if you can't eat anything, at least keeps your blood glucose from dropping down too far.
Yeah, so I mean, I put an article in there as well, how to deal with like Delhi Belly, which is something that could be you experienced, I guess, during the shit hit the fan situation of any sort, power outages or whatever. And it's just a good article to read beforehand, just to know what you're dealing with and how to deal with it.
Absolutely. So how do we deal with it? I guess that's the next question. Aside from washing our hands 7 trillion times a day, which is not a bad way to start.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing you can do in the city, if you're living in the city, and or even have a decent-sized plot of land, if the sewage is backed up and the land isn't completely flooded, you can always dig what they call a slit trench, which you could figure out your own way to sit over top of it, but just dig a trench as you use it, just fill in a little tiny bit at a time. If you're lucky enough to have access to a porta potty, you can just dig a different pit below it, cut out the bottom if you had to, but there's a porta potty option. You can either make a field expedient one. And this was actually given to me by the traveling prepper. He actually sent me a text picture of this one once, because he actually had his sewer frozen up. His was like a mini shit hit the fan situation. And so I suggested getting, I guess, one of these things. It's like a $12 adapter for a top of a 5-gallon bucket. And so you just fit it on top of the 5-gallon bucket, and it's got a nice little toilet seat. And I was like thinking I was all clever, and he beat me. So he got a $3 bucket and a $1 pool noodle and made his own
What was in that bucket?
I really hope that was water.
Geez, I hope that was too. No, no, that was straight from watering the chickens. Anyway, so
you weren't field testing your equipment, were you?
Yeah, I thought we were going to talk about that. That was for the Patreon episode.
You can take that one step further by adding a bag, like put a trash bag in it.
Yep.
Yeah,
and then you've got something to do with it. A little bit of kitty litter will help keep the smell down while you fill that. Don't rely on one. One is none in this case.
Yeah, and actually, interesting thing about this one though, the better solution that he gave me was the fact that if you think about it in wintertime, which one would you rather sit on, the gold plastic or the insulated foam?
It's plush when you flush. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that would be way warmer to sit on, to tell you the truth.
Absolutely.
So no, it's actually a really good idea and much cheaper. I think he came in at about $5 total cost between the bucket and the pool noodle. So I think he halved my cost. So
That's
there
good.
you go. Oh, that's yeah. So just make sure that you got more than one, because that is another surface. That's another surface that will absorb bacteria to contaminate. So it's a great idea. Just make sure you're planning to replace it and not using it as your be all end all.
yeah, because I think one pool noodle will get you about what, 4 of these, and then so if you have 2 or 3 pool noodles hanging around, you've got some disposable action right there, plus bleach wipes or whatever have you.
Yep. And like you mentioned, Alan, putting a bag in the bucket there too will help as well for making it a little bit easier to take things out.
Keep your liquids separated from your solids to prevent fermentation.
Yep.
Right on.
You got it. And like this is a topic that everybody seems to forget about when they're putting their emergency plan together, right? Everybody takes for granted the fact that we've got access to toilets, you got access to sinks, you've got access to running water, baths, showers, etc. You don't really think about, everybody's human. You got to have a plan for where to put those bodily functions, right? But you just think, if something happens, I'll just flush my toilet. Well,
bear shit's not work. Wood, so can I, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the those bodily functions that are part of being a human, remember, it adds up quickly, right? So I'm looking at all you dog owners right now. The winter's over. Take a look in your backyard. Right? What's out there? Now apply that to every single member of your household for a month or two.
But if you bury it in snow, it doesn't exist anymore, right?
Until the snow melts.
Then you just have to walk around it until snow comes back the next time, and then everything's good.
Yeah, until the neighbors start calling and bylaw comes by. And
yeah, but when the shit hits the fan, there's no bylaw anymore. So
this is true. This is true. But just go back up to the top where Ian was talking about all the wonderful things that you can get.
Oh yeah, cholera and dysentery, and
I think rather just take a page of looking in your backyard for the dog poop and realize that all your family members, that's going to be a lot of poop.
No, so have a plan and work your plan at some point so that you know that it's going to work.
Exactly.
Not a whole lot to add to Ian's notes, because he's very definitely a subject matter expert. No one knows his shit like Ian. But diseases can, at the very least, incapacitate most people, and in many cases, they can actually kill. Right now, if somebody catches a case of cholera or dysentery or tuberculosis, there's something that we can do about it. If you don't have access to a pharmacy or a doctor or any of those things, then that becomes an Oregon Trail situation. And if everybody of a certain age has played Oregon Trail at some point, and you have died of dysentery along the road, it's going to happen. Malnutrition and poor hygiene often go hand in hand, or hand in mouth, I guess. But you can't have one. You can't have one without the other. I remember reading. I forget where. I want to say it was in. I forget what book it was in, but during Roman conquering times, the soldiers would actually tip their arrows with their own excrement to increase the disease spread amongst the army. They didn't really care about killing them at once, but they could make everybody sick. As we mentioned earlier, like during the Civil War, most of the deaths occurred due to post-operative infections rather than the actual combat. So our big thing is to isolate yourself, right? Keep clean. You're gonna have to handle it at some point, so be prepared for that. Wear your gloves, wear a mask, all of those good things. Change those things regularly, right? If your gloves tear, wash up, change your gloves, go back to it. There are a million different isolation things you can do to prevent the spread of disease. Masks and respirators, but the biggest thing is if there are, most of those diseases are caused by droplet spread. So isolate yourself from the droplets. Whatever works best for you is a good way to do it. Ian and I were talking off the air about at another time about a facial hair and isolation masks, and Ian was saying that there's a loosened control on facial hair within certain manufacturers, but most of them still say you've got to have a clean face to get a good seal. So make sure that you've tested that and that you deal with it before it's necessary. Also, don't forget to stock up on hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizer is it's not the perfect solution, but it's better than nothing for killing off whatever's on your hands.
Actually, I gotta hop in there. A couple things I wanted to make. So, actually, in addition to the Civil War and the Romans, in the Vietnam War, the punji sticks. They used to have the pits with the bamboo sticks covered.
Oh yeah, the punji pits. I forgot about that.
Yeah, covered in poop as well. I was going to mention the gloves you can get at Walmart cheap, like 100 pack for like $6 or $8. I can't remember what it is. It's dirt cheap. So I mean, there's no excuse not to have like a 100 pack of one size fits all rubber gloves. If you have allergies, like you said, the nitrile are a little better, are they not?
Yep, nitrile. Avoid latex. There are vinyl and nitrile are the two most common ones. The vinyl are cheaper and they're easy to stock up on, but they don't have as much stretch. So they're a little less forgiving and they're more prone to tearing in my experience. I like the nitrile gloves, the nitrile. They're available in a variety of thicknesses. I find the best source for those is actually from Princess Auto. They sell them as kind of mechanics gloves. But again, they're cheap, they're readily available, and it's a good excuse to go to Princess Auto. But they're a little bit stretchier. That's just kind of my experience. I have big hands. Just one of those tricks of the trade. If you do buy nitrile gloves, don't buy the black ones. They might look really cool and really tactical, but if you are using them for a medical purpose, especially in low light conditions, you can't tell the difference between blood and sweat. So use a lighter color.
And tactical poop cleanup really isn't a thing, right?
Well, I'm just multi-purpose, right? We're going to have gloves on hand. They do multiple things. Just avoid the black ones. The lighter colors are easier to tell what the contamination is.
No, overall. For sure, you're absolutely right on that. And
so on our next episode, it's going to be how to complete tactical poop cleanup.
Yeah. and so we can continue our argument here. Just so you know, the Canadian Forces also relaxed their mask requirements. They can grow beards now.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Until the FDA does, I get to speak clean shaven.
Oh boy. We do have a tip here in the YouTube channel from someone who's watching in regards to storing rolls of toilet paper in giant vacuum sealed bags. Tim in the live chat here says he's got over 300 rolls of toilet paper in giant vacuum sealed bags, and they go pretty flat and reshape very well as well. So
cool. Thanks
for the tip, Tim. We appreciate it.
I think I had something in here about that too, going for a little further down my in my notes, something about making sure that when you are storing toilet paper, make sure it's a good call to do it in vacuum bags, but also store it in a hard container. Because if mice get into that, they can go through that pretty quickly. That's excellent nesting material for them.
Oh, come on. Call it what you called it in the show notes.
Shit tickets. They're called shit tickets.
We're cutting loose with the language this time. You might as well enjoy it, right?
Parental advisory checkbox.
Yeah.
Poop paper, shit ticket, whatever you want to call it.
Well, you actually had a very good point in the fact that you should track how much you use in a given period. And then try and figure out if you want to have a 6-month supply or whatever have you. Like 300 rolls is epically awesome.
That's fantastic. That's about a week and a half supply when I've got a house full of women. So make sure you track how much you're using. Do that over a set period. Multiply that out by the number of the length of time that you feel you need to be prepared for, and then keep adding to it so that you never have less than that on hand.
It's a lot of tickets to the shit show.
Absolutely.
We knew there was going to be a lot of jokes in this episode.
So I think our next episode needs to be what do you do when you're up shit creek without a paddle? How do we improvise paddles?
Yeah, so it's starting to sound like an episode of Trailer Park Boys. With the shit analogies.
Oh boy.
I don't think they're analogies at all. So another point, and we've said this before, but I'm going to hammer this back because it's worth repeating. The volume of soap and water that you have on hand cannot be overstated. Every so often, I find the 12-pack of Irish Spring soaps on sale for about $4 at Walmart. Buy a dozen of those. Right? It's a cheap way to keep yourself from becoming a statistic. In the absence of running water and soap, wipes are another kind of good second-tier source. Wet ones are kind of the retail level, and they do a good job of sanitary. A resource that I've used before is wipes.com. They have actually a fairly wide range of wipes, including personal sanitary wipes and lubricating wipes for equipment and all kinds of stuff. But it was started by a bunch of muscle heads that wanted to have a way to clean gym equipment. So they're fairly inexpensive. They're available in bulk and they're well packaged.
Well, yeah, family safe site.
Oh, absolutely, a family safe site.
Yeah, I had one of those sketchy names to it, but no, you can definitely get a 100-pack of these BZK wipes. They're like benzoyl calcium chloride or something like that, and they're antiseptic wipes as well. And they're kind of prepackaged in foil wrap, so they stay a long time, and obviously help clean you up without water, which is nice.
And also, every time you go and get any kind of takeout, especially chicken, grab a handful of wet wipes and throw them in your glove box.
Well, on that note, don't be afraid to steal from the hotel soaps too.
Yeah, absolutely. if you're not taking the hotel soaps and shampoo, you're doing it wrong.
That's right.
And you've mapped out multiple exits because you've listened to previous episodes where we've mentioned the fact you should map out multiple exits. So
just grab the soap and go.
Grab the soap and go.
That's right.
Just don't drop the soap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went there.
On a more serious topic of shit, make sure that you're well stocked. We had the demonstration of Ian's mystery liquid in the bucket. Line that with a bag. Kitty litter will help keep the smell down. Also, so will lye. But you'll lie, by the way, not will I, but so will lie, and it'll help keep the smell down, help keep it solidified. Make sure you're well overstocked. Always double bag that, or it'll end up, the Archduke of poop, because Ian can't be dethroned, but Archduke of shit that has to be the guy who has to go clean up the buckets, and you don't want to be that guy. Nobody wants to be that guy. So,
well, especially if somebody's really ill, you don't want to catch what they're having either. Right?
Absolutely. So make sure you sanitize the bucket every time, right? Bleach is a good way to do that. So are probably those BKZ wipes. But sanitize the bucket, and also a good idea, especially if somebody's sick, maybe have an additional bucket on hand that can be isolated for them.
And then they can take out their own stuff too.
Yes, yeah. They can clean up their own shit. They can clean up their own shit, and I don't have to deal with it. That's right. Because frankly, I'm getting tired of dealing with other people's shit.
There it is.
Let's get it all out now.
And another little point about keeping yourself hygienic and healthy is to make sure you take care of your mouth. Oral hygiene is also super important. Good thing to deal with when poop hits the fan, but make sure that you're taking care of your teeth, brush and floss. Be well stocked in that as well. That's about all I have to say about my rather unsanitary sanitation.
So for sure, I mean, yeah, this isn't certainly a catch-all episode by any means, I wouldn't think, but just one.
Not like your poop bucket.
That's right, not like the poop bucket. But I mean, for sure, it's something that we should all really think about. Besides the obvious, beans, band-aids, and bullets. I mean, you got to think about cleaning up everything afterwards too. So I think we should all welcome more questions about this and maybe come back on it another time. But yeah, I just wanted to raise awareness for this one for sure.
Absolutely. No, I think this is a great one where I'd love to hear from all of the listeners, all the viewers, what the other ideas are out there, because this is by, of course, no means the only way to deal with this particular situation. Something else that is worth mentioning: use your hand washing water. When you do wash your hands with soap and water, keep that water. That becomes gray water that you can use to flush your toilets into your septic field.
Yeah.
so that you're not using drinking water to do that.
So if you got any shit tips, you can fire them into feedback@prepperpodcast.ca and let us know, and we'll get them on the next episode.
Can we create a specific account for that, shit tips at prepperpodcast.ca? Because I think this needs to be an ongoing thing.
Okay, so I will edit that first line out. If you have any shit tips, you can email them to shittips@prepperpodcast.ca.
By the time this goes to iTunes, yeah.
And you can no longer find the podcast on iTunes.
Speaking of which,
and in places where we've currently been banned.
Yeah. You're going to have to go to the dark web now to find the podcast.
Trust me, if you guys ever listen to International Liberty Death, which I love those guys to death, but I mean, if those guys can stay on iTunes, I'm sure we can too with the shit jokes.
Oh, I'm sure we'll be just fine. I'll check the parental advisory box for this one, and I'm sure they'll be okay.
All right,
should we move into the podcast challenge?
I think we should.
Right on. So, podcast challenge this week, in keeping with our shitty line of reasoning here. Let's arrange an alternate means of dealing with bathroom waste. So, have a water-free way of sanitizing afterwards. We mentioned Purelle, I think. Alcohol, liquid gel. These BZK wipes, wet ones, whatever have you. Please just make sure you have a way to eliminate yourself and then eliminate the waste afterwards.
Mm-hmm. By the way, spend the extra couple of dollars on the hand sanitizer from the drugstore, not the dollar store. I find the stuff from the dollar store it's really sticky and it doesn't feel clean afterwards. Whereas the foaming, Zep or Purelle version from the drugstore, a couple of dollars more, but I find it to be more effective.
Good to know.
Yeah, just one of those experiential things.
Let's move into upcoming events. So we've still got the 2019 annual Preppers Meet in Desboro, Ontario, happening July 11th to the 14th. Head over to the website at annualpreppersmeet.com to check out all the events. I know they are still updating it, so a lot of the old 2018 stuff is still up there. But check it out. It's always a good time. It's a good couple of days, some good training. They've got a Facebook page as well. If you want to head over to Facebook and look them up there, you can check them out and get talking with everybody that has been or is going. And it's always a good time. So check it out at annualpreppersmeet.com.
Cool. I've got the Western Canada Hot Springs Meet exactly 1 month from today. May 25th, 26th. It's the weekend after the May long weekend at Sloquet Hot Springs. I threw a couple links in the show notes on how to get there, what it's all about. We'll have some Campcraft discussion, meet up for like-minded people, a bit of an adventure to get there. And on the maps.me app, you can easily find your way there as well if you need directions. So far, I've got the time off. I think my cousin's showing up with his significant other. I've got a couple other guys that preparedness minded showed up, so at least I won't be by myself so far. Anyway, July 6th as well, podcaster charity shoot in Drumheller, Alberta. So everyone is welcome to that one. Planned events so far seem to be a Mapleseed course, which is a 22 marksmanship course, a Stop the Bleed class, and I understood there's something about a handgun class. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but just a fun shoot as well. So it should be a good time. That's July 6th in Drumheller, Alberta. Ooh, there we go.
Very nice.
Anybody in Southwestern Ontario, if you're interested in a Stop the Bleed class, I'm more than happy to set that up. It's done free of charge, and there are a couple of licensees around here, including LHSC, and they will come out and do a class. So if you're in Southwestern Ontario and you are interested in that, either find me on Facebook, or on Instagram, which you can do later at the end of the show, or shoot an email to Eric, and he will pass it on to me, and I'm happy to set that up. I think that's something everybody should have. If you have any interest in being prepared to save a life, it is an excellent resource.
Awesome. I'm interested. Can I email it?
So would I be. I'm just on the wrong side of the country.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump away. I mean, it's only 3 time zones, right?
Yeah. It's 15, 20-minute drive tops, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. All right. So we move into shout-outs. So
I always lose interest in the show notes before I get here and continuously forget. So I'll pass on this one, guys.
No problem. I just added mine about, a minute ago.
How about your significant other for giving you the time to come to your podcast or something? I don't know.
Oh, she's giving me the eye from the right now. It's been a little while, so.
Oh boy.
Love you, darling.
So I've got a shout out to Chris Gilmore, who is working hard to get Survive the Storms up and running. He was on an episode or a couple episodes ago with us. His instructional series there, Survive the Storms, is starting to take off, and he's starting to get some people educated. So just a quick shout out, say thanks for supplying something out to the preparedness community that is certainly going to get some education out there.
Very cool.
All right, I got a couple for a username Flumser from Canadian Gun Nuts. Just a quick shout out to him, just to remind him it's a small world. And then the self-reliance god today for being patient while he was instructing me. I think he only laughed once or twice while I was starting my welds. And then he was very generous with his time, so I just thought I'd throw that out there to tell him I was very appreciative of it.
Welding is one of those things. Absolutely love welding, and if you are not terrible at welding when you begin, you are some kind of skill. Everybody's bad at it when they start.
Oh yeah, no, it's funny. It's quite the skill set. It's not as it's once you get going, it's not as bad as I thought it'd be. And you get right into it. Actually, it's quite funny. But yeah, the first couple times you're like, it's like that. Just like when you just go shooting, whether the flash, the bang, whatever. Yeah. You're just like, well, okay, I can get right into on this, and it's not as overwhelming as I thought. That's for sure. So.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Very cool. If you check out on YouTube, there are a million videos out there of people just like you can weld right off a truck if you've got a couple of big deep cycle batteries and some cables. You can actually stick weld without a welder just by using a couple of truck batteries. So it's the next level there for when the shit hits the fan and you need to fix something.
Yeah, actually, I was asking my mentor there about today, like just using a Screaming Demon, the old champion generator, and that'll work. It as long as you're not trying to use an inverter style, you can, as long as it's one of those generators that throws out tons of power, you can use one of those for sure. So I mean, our one that handles our water pump would definitely handle the welding setup. Yep.
Oh, cool. So if you need to build your outhouse out of metal or something, good to go.
Or I'm thinking like the anti-tank traps, or like the big post sticking out from your house during Mad Max scenario. Tack those in place. You might have them pre-positioned or something. Just tack them into place when time comes.
Rakes with axes for the zombies. The axe hits in the face. No more zombies.
That's right.
So we'll move into email and iTunes reviews. So no written reviews on iTunes or Podbean. However, we are up to 19 5-star reviews. When we've got that 1 4-star review, but as I keep saying, don't worry about that little guy. It's okay.
I think when we hit 20, we need to stop mentioning the 4-star. I think that's a good goal there. Guys, let us know what's up if you've got any comments or questions or feedback. We like talking about these emails.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's the inbox has been empty for the last couple of episodes. So, fire an email into feedback@prepperpodcast.ca and let us know what you like, what you don't like, and we'll talk about it on the next show.
Prepperpodcast.ca.
Yes. Yeah. Don't forget that one. All right. So I guess that means it's time to bring things to an end here. So I'm going to bring episode number 21 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Please help us out and take a few minutes, submit a review. It helps other people find us. You can also find us at prepperpodcast.ca.
We record these shows live on YouTube chats. If you want to get an early peek of the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Island Retreat, and click the notifications tab. That will give you alerts when we're going live. You can find me directly on Instagram at PPSWO, or send an email through Eric, and he will forward it on to me.
Right on. You can reach Ian directly by emailing me at theislandretreat@gmail.com. And you can also find me giving my 2 cents worth on Canadian Patriot Podcast, also available on iTunes and YouTube. There you're going to find us discussing the merits of a freer society, exposing more government waste with various news articles, and squirreling off on the tactically driven conversation.
Right, so please check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com. You can get me there at the live chat while you're buying some prepper gear. You can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. So thanks for joining us, and you can tune in next episode where we're going to discuss vehicle gear and setup from a preparedness perspective. Until next time, stay safe, be prepared,
and keep learning.